Captain Mark Reed stood at the command bridge of the TSS Defender, the flagship of Earth's Third Fleet. His weathered face remained stoic as the massive alien vessel materialized at the edge of Saturn's rings. The ship dwarfed even the largest Terran dreadnoughts, its hull shimmering with an iridescent purple glow that defied human engineering principles. "Status report," Reed ordered, his voice steady despite the tension crackling through the bridge. "Unknown vessel, approximately 15 kilometers in length. No recognizable propulsion system. Energy signatures off the charts, sir," reported Lieutenant Anna Jones from her sensor station. "They're broadcasting something. Not on any frequency we've cataloged." Reed nodded. First contact protocol had been drilled into every officer since the academy. "Open all channels. Standard greeting package." The Xylar had arrived without warning. Decades of searching the stars for intelligent life, and they had simply appeared in humanity's backyard, without so much as triggering the early warning systems scattered throughout the solar system. Admiral Thomas Hall's hologram flickered into existence beside Reed. "Captain, the Security Council is convening. They want your assessment. Tell them we're looking at technology centuries beyond ours," Reed replied, his gaze fixed on the tactical display. "If they're hostile, we're in trouble." The Xylar ship began deploying smaller vessels, each still larger than Reed's cruiser. They moved with impossible grace, defying inertia as they positioned themselves in a perfect geometric pattern around Saturn. "Sir," called Communications Officer David Wu, "they're responding to our greeting." The main view screen filled with the image of a being unlike anything in Earth's biological records. Multiple limbs framed a central mass covered in what appeared to be both scales and fur, with 3 sets of eyes arranged vertically. The bridge fell silent. Humanity had prepared for this moment for generations. First contact. The revelation that they were not alone in the universe. What nobody had prepared for was the sensation of utter insignificance that washed over them as they gazed upon the Xylar. This was no primitive civilization making its first tentative steps into space. This was an empire that had likely been crossing the stars while humans were still figuring out agriculture. "Defensive positions," Reed ordered quietly. "But no aggressive moves. Let's not start an interstellar incident." As the smaller Xylar vessels continued their precise deployment, Reed couldn't help but wonder if humanity was witnessing first contact or the beginning of an invasion. The Terran Empire, as the coalition of Earth and its colonies styled itself, was the pinnacle of human achievement, but in the face of the Xylar, it suddenly seemed like a child's sandcastle before the tide. "Sir," Wu's voice broke through Reed's thoughts, "they're sending data packets. Massive ones. Isolate and analyze in the secure systems," Reed replied. "And someone get me the xenolinguistics team. Now." The fate of humanity hung in the balance as the Xylar completed their formation around Saturn, their intentions as alien as their biology. 3 days after the arrival of the Xylar, the Terran Empire's finest linguists, mathematicians, and xenobiologists had made frustratingly little progress. Dr. Elaine Morris, head of the hastily assembled First Contact communication team, rubbed her bloodshot eyes as she stared at the holographic symbols floating before her. "It's not a language as we understand it," she explained to Captain Reed and the assembled military and civilian leadership. "That Xylar don't communicate through discrete words or even concepts. It's mathematical, but also biological. Like they're sharing actual experiences rather than descriptions." Professor James Taylor, a quantum computing specialist, nodded enthusiastically. "The data packets they sent contain what we believe are sensory recordings, not just visual or auditory, but perceptions we don't even have words for." "Can we respond?" asked Reed, acutely aware that the Xylar had remained in their perfect formation, neither advancing nor retreating. "We've cobbled together a rudimentary translation matrix," Morris replied. "But it's like trying to explain color to someone born blind. Our conceptual frameworks are just too different." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Leo Kim, a retired music theorist who had been brought in as a consultant, identified patterns in the sci-fi transmissions that corresponded to mathematical harmonics. "It's not just what they're saying, it's how they're saying it," Kim explained, excitement making his hands tremble as he manipulated the holographic interface. The carrier wave itself contains information, emotional context, perhaps, or cultural references. Using this insight, the team constructed a response based on simple mathematical principles and Earth's musical scales. They sent it with trepidation, knowing it might be received as gibberish, or worse, as an insult. Hours passed in tense silence. Then the Scylar responded. "They've sent coordinates," Wu announced from his station on the Defender, "and what appears to be a time designation." "They want a meeting," Morris breathed. The Security Council debated for hours. Was this a trap? A genuine attempt at diplomacy? Should Earth's representatives meet the Scylar in space, or invite them to Earth? In the end, a compromise was reached. A delegation led by Dr. Morris and Captain Reed would meet Scylar representatives aboard a Terran science vessel positioned at the neutral coordinates between the fleets. As Reed's shuttle approached the rendezvous point, he found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about humanity's place in the cosmos. The Scylar had technology that made human achievements seem primitive by comparison, yet they had chosen to communicate rather than conquer. "We're about to discover if we've been speaking to them or just making noise," Morris said as they prepared to dock. "Let's hope they like what they hear," Reed replied. The meeting chamber aboard the TSS Einstein had been specially prepared for the historic encounter. Earth's finest environmental engineers had created an atmosphere that their best guests suggested would be comfortable for the Scylar, based on spectrographic analysis of their ship's emissions. Captain Reed stood beside Dr. Morris as the airlock cycled. His hand rested instinctively on his sidearm, though he knew it would be useless if the Scylar proved hostile. "Remember," Morris whispered, "no sudden movements, no baring of teeth. We don't know what might constitute a threat display to them." The inner door slid open, revealing 3 Scylar representatives. Up close, they were even more alien. Their bodies seemed to shift and flow, as if not entirely committed to a single form. The central figure was larger, its purple-scaled surface reflecting the light in hypnotic patterns. Reed swallowed hard. "Welcome," he said simply, knowing the translation matrix would convert his words into the mathematical harmonic language they had constructed. The lead Scylar responded with a series of tones that the matrix translated as observed, curious, primitive yet complex. Morris stepped forward. "We are honored by your presence. We seek peaceful exchange of knowledge." What followed was the most challenging diplomatic exchange in human history. The Scylar concept of self was not individual but collective. They expressed confusion at humanity's emphasis on personal achievement and competition. "You fracture your unity," came the translation of one particularly complex harmonic sequence. "Inefficient, dangerous. Our diversity is our strength," Morris countered. "Different perspectives lead to innovation." The Scylar seemed skeptical. They exhibited what the human delegation interpreted as alarm when they learned that humans made decisions based partly on emotional responses rather than pure logical calculation. When Reed explained the concept of nations and borders, the Scylar emitted a series of rapid vibrations that overloaded the translation matrix temporarily. "I think we just told them that we deliberately divide our planet and then compete for resources," Morris said quietly. "They find it incomprehensible." The cultural divide seemed insurmountable. The Scylar operated on consensus and had apparently evolved beyond conflict among their own kind. They viewed Earth's history of warfare with what could only be described as horror. "You destroy your own kind," the lead Scylar communicated. "Yet you create beauty. Contradictory. That's humanity in a nutshell," Reed muttered. As the meeting concluded, the Scylar presented the humans with a small crystalline object that defied analysis by the Einstein sensors. "Knowledge," was all they said. Reed couldn't shake the feeling that they were being tested, that the Xylar were deciding whether humanity deserved a place among the stars or needed to be contained for the safety of the galaxy. 2 weeks after first contact, tensions were mounting. The crystalline object given by the Xylar had proven impenetrable to all analysis. Meanwhile, more Xylar ships had arrived in the outer solar system, establishing what military analysts could only interpret as strategic positions. The Terran Security Council was divided. Some members advocated for a preemptive strike, arguing that Earth needed to demonstrate strength. Others counseled patience and continued diplomacy. Captain Reed found himself summoned to an emergency session, where Admiral Hall presented the latest intelligence. "They've mapped our entire defense network," Hall said grimly. "Every outpost, every weapons platform. If they decide to move against us, they know exactly where to strike." "With respect, Admiral," Reed countered, "if they wanted to attack, they could have done so already. Their technology outclasses ours in every way." The debate was interrupted when Dr. Morris burst into the chamber, her face flushed with excitement. "We've done it," she announced. "We've accessed the crystal." The object, it turned out, was a data storage device of unimaginable capacity. It contained not weapons schematics or invasion plans, but a complete history of the Xylar civilization, including their first encounters with other species. "They were like us once," Morris explained as she displayed translated segments. "Divided, warlike, driven by the same fears and ambitions. But they evolved. They found unity. And they've been searching the galaxy for other species approaching their technological singularity point." "Why?" asked one of the council members. "Because it's the moment of greatest danger for any civilization," Morris replied. "The point where they gain the power to destroy themselves, or transcend their limitations." Reed understood suddenly. "They're not mapping our defenses. They're assessing our development." "Exactly," Morris nodded. "The crystal contains technological knowledge, clean energy production, advanced medical techniques, sustainable agriculture, but notably, nothing that could be weaponized. They're offering to help us through our evolutionary bottleneck, but only if we choose cooperation over conflict." The revelation changed everything. What had seemed like an implicit threat was actually a conditional offer of mentorship. The Xylar weren't preparing to conquer Earth. They were giving humanity the opportunity to join a community of advanced civilizations, but only if they could demonstrate they wouldn't bring their warlike tendencies to the stars. Reed stood before the council. "This is humanity's turning point," he said. "Not a military challenge, but a moral one. The Xylar are asking if we're ready to grow up as a species." For the first time since the massive alien ships had appeared, Reed felt hope rather than dread. The Terran Empire had always defined itself by its strength and independence. Now it would have to redefine itself by its wisdom and restraint. "We need to show them who we can be," he said, "not who we've been." 1 year after the arrival of the Xylar, Earth had changed profoundly. The knowledge contained in the crystal had sparked a technological renaissance. Clean fusion reactors were replacing fossil fuels. Nanotechnology was revolutionizing medicine. Quantum communication networks were connecting the planet as never before. But the greatest changes were philosophical. The realization that humanity was not alone, and that its aggressive tendencies were viewed with alarm by more advanced civilizations, had triggered a fundamental reassessment of terrestrial priorities. Captain Reed, now Admiral Reed, stood in the observation lounge of the newly commissioned TSS Harmony, Earth's first diplomatic vessel designed specifically for interstellar relations. Beside him, Dr. Morris gazed out at the stars. "The Security Council votes today on the final ratification of the Stellar Community Charter," she remarked. 2 years ago, who could have imagined Earth voluntarily joining an interstellar confederation? Reed smiled. 2 years ago, we were still pretending we were the center of the universe. The Xylar had revealed the existence of 17 other spacefaring civilizations in the nearby galactic sector, most centuries or millennia more advanced than humanity. The stellar community wasn't an empire or a government, but a loose association dedicated to knowledge sharing and mutual defense against existential threats. We still have skeptics, Morris noted, people who think we're surrendering our sovereignty. They're missing the point, Reed replied. We're not giving up anything except our illusions. The universe doesn't care about human exceptionalism. The only question is whether we're mature enough to be good neighbors. The lessons had been difficult for many to accept. Humans had long assumed they would emerge into the galactic community as equals or even conquerors. The reality that they were latecomers to a civilization far older and more advanced than they had imagined had been humbling. Yet from that humility had come growth. International conflicts had diminished as nations recognized that their common humanity outweighed their differences. Resources previously dedicated to weapons research were being redirected to exploration and development. The Xylar were right about one thing, Reed said. We were at a turning point. We could have responded with fear and aggression when they arrived. Instead, we chose curiosity and diplomacy. Humanity's greatest strength was never our technology, Morris agreed. It was our adaptability, our creativity in the face of challenges. As they spoke, a notification appeared on Reed's comm device. The vote had passed. Earth was officially joining the stellar community. Outside the viewports, the massive Xylar ship that had caused such alarm a year earlier now represented not an existential threat, but a bridge to a larger universe. Soon, the first human diplomats and scientists would depart for Xylar space and beyond, ambassadors of a species finally ready to take its place among the stars. You know what I find most remarkable? Reed said as they watched Earth recede below them. We called ourselves an empire before we'd even left our own solar system. Now we understand what true civilization looks like. The Terran Empire had arrived on the galactic stage, not as conquerors, but as students eager to learn. And in that transformation lay humanity's greatest victory.